We're going to be in the book of Joel, and we'll also be in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles maybe, looking for context for Joel. So you don't have this screen working, but you've got that one working, right?
They should both be working.
Oh yeah, there it is. Very good deal. All right, well, you point to them and we'll start. Good evening, everybody. So glad you're listening to this. I'm Patrick Hayes, one of the ministers at Redeeming Life Ministries Church here in Staunton, Virginia. And tonight we're going to be looking at the little book of Joel in the Old Testament. And I hope you'll enjoy it. May God bless us. Pastor James is here with us. Would you like to open up for us with a word of prayer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Father, thank you for this time together this evening, and as we study and look into the book of Joel, Lord, just ask you to open our hearts, our understanding, our minds, and use it, Lord, somehow to help us get to know you a little bit better tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Now I'm going to read a little bit from the opening chapter of Joel, and then we'll back up and decide what the background for this prophet is and for his times. Let's just read. The word of the Lord that came to Joel, the son of Pethuel. Now, we do not know who Joel is, and we don't know who his father or grandfather Pethuel is. But apparently, Pethuel was somebody, or he wouldn't be mentioning the name. Now, what he gets into is trouble from the start. He's talking about trouble in Jerusalem. Joel is a prophet, as Obadiah, whom we looked at last week. Both of these were prophets not to northern Israel, but to Jerusalem and Judah in the south. Hear this, ye old men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? In other words, something is happening now that's never happened before. None of you can look at what's going on right now and say, yeah, this is the way it's always been. No, something unique, extraordinary is taking place. Verse 3, you'll be able to tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. That which the palmer worm has left, the locust has eaten. And that which the locust has left, the cankerworm has eaten. And that which the cankerworm has left, the caterpillar has eaten. Strange metaphors, but he's actually talking about the life of an insect, from larva to pupa to worm, and finally to full-grown locust. And he doesn't have them in that order, of course, but this is a plague, an insect in worm form, in pupa form, in caterpillar form, or in flying locust form. This is a plague of an insect that swarms and will completely devour a tree. The tree Joel is talking about, we will learn, is Jerusalem and or Judah. Now he gets to fussing at people who live in Jerusalem or Judah. Awake, you drunkards, and weep and howl, all you drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it is cut off from your mouths. For a nation is come upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are like the teeth of lions, And they have the cheek teeth of a great lion. He uses two different words for lion there, the young lion and the old kingly lion. And he's talking about some people, some nation that has come up to attack Judah and Jerusalem. He has laid my vine waste. He has barked my fig tree. That's what the locusts will do. They'll go after fig trees. He has, of course, the fig tree representing Judah. He has made it clean bare and cast it away. The branches thereof are made white, all bark stripped off of them. Lament. Now, I want you to notice how many times he uses the imperative form of a verb, telling people to do something. You don't have to go back with me on the screen with these, Jeremy. Just stay where you're at. But look at all the imperatives. You know what an imperative is. Imperative tense. It means a command tense. If I say, you slept, that's past tense. If I say you sleep, that's present tense. If I say you will sleep, that's future tense. But if I look at you and point a finger at you and say, sleep, well, that's imperative tense. Telling somebody to do something. So look at verse 2. Hear this, ye old men. Verse 3, tell your children. Verse 5, awake, you drunkards. Now, verse 8, lament like a virgin girded with sackcloth for the husband of her youth. Now, we're going to see more and more imperatives. Joel is calling people to behave in a certain way, to do something, to respond to his words. A lot of imperative verbs here. Verse 9, the meat offering and the drink offering is cut off from the house of the Lord. That's very important to notice. This is a time when the temple has been shut down. There's no more offerings going up in the temple. What time in Judah's history could this be? The priests and the Lord's ministers mourn. The field is wasted. The land mourns, for the corn is wasted. The new wine is dried up. The oil languishes. It's a second mention of new wine. Here's another imperative phrase. Be ye ashamed, O you husbandmen. Another imperative verb. Howl, O ye vineyards, or vine dressers, for the wheat and for the barley, because the harvest of the field is perished. So the temple is not open. Vineyards aren't being worked. And now we find that fields are not being worked. Orchards are shut down. Something terrible is going on. Verse 12, the vine is dried up and the fig tree languishes. The pomegranate tree, the palm tree also, and the apple tree, even all the trees of the field are withered, because joy is withered away from the sons of men. Something awful is happening. And we're going to decide what it is, at what point in history. You can read various commentaries. Some will say that Joel is probably writing about what happened after the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. Others think that this is occurring in the days of King Hezekiah, a couple of centuries before that, or a century or more before that, and that this is the Assyrian army coming in to attack. But in neither of those times, well, at least in Hezekiah's time, the temple wasn't shut down. Hezekiah kept it all going, even though 185,000 Assyrians surrounded the city of Jerusalem. Hezekiah didn't miss a beat inside the city during all that time. So this can't refer to Hezekiah's time exactly. The temple is not shut down. But does it refer to the time of the Babylonians? Well, we get another imperative verb in verse 13. Gird yourselves and lament, O ye priests. Second time he's mentioned priests that aren't doing what they ought to be doing. Howl, another imperative verb. Howl, you ministers of the altar. Another imperative verb. Come, lie all night in sackcloth, ye ministers of my God, for the meat offering and the drink offering is withholden from the house of your God. Second time he's mentioned that the temple might be shut down and not operating. Another imperative verb, sanctify a fast. Another imperative verb, call a solemn assembly. A third one, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God. And finally, a last imperative verb here in this section, cry unto the Lord. All right, let's stop right there with verse 14. What could be going on for Joel to write all of this? And let me remind you that Joel is a prophet quoted in the New Testament. St. Peter will quote him on the day of Pentecost. Joel's not an unimportant prophet. But here's some events that are going on. Something has happened. The people aren't taken out of the land, so this can't be the days of the Babylonian attack. The temple is not destroyed. It's just closed. Joel is rebuking priests, ministers of the altar for not doing what they're supposed to do. What could this be? Brother James and I were having lunch a few years ago in a local restaurant with two or three preachers. And we were talking about things in the Bible. And I mentioned the days of Athaliah. Now, at least two of these preachers there had been preaching as long as I have. And I said, well, it reminds me of the days of Athaliah, Queen Athaliah. And I talked about it a minute. And one of the preachers put his finger and said, who are you talking about? And I said, Athaliah. He said, I've never heard of him. I said, it's a woman, Queen Athaliah. I've never heard of that. And I said, well, it takes up 2 chapters in 2 Kings and 2 chapters in 2 Chronicles, the story of Queen Athaliah. Now, I didn't want to fuss at him too much, but the other two had never heard the name either. And what gets me is that, and I find this all the time, I don't mean to sound harsh, but preachers just kind of listen to other preachers and borrow their sermon ideas from them and really don't read their Bibles for themselves. To me, the story of Queen Athaliah, which I think is the background story for the book of Joel, is one of the most important stories in Old Testament history. And let's go back, and you can pull this on the screen, Brother Jeremy. 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 1. Now, it begins with her name. And when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the seed royal. So whoever she is, she's got a lot of power to destroy all of the descendants of David, all of the seed royal. So let's just stay there a moment and let me tell you who Athaliah is. She's who I call one of the 3 witch queens. Witch queens in the history of Old Testament Israel. Now, if I ask somebody who do you think were the other 2 witch queens, somebody always raises a hand and says, the witch of Endor. Well, she was a witch, but she wasn't a queen. But there were 3 queens who were witches. The first one was Maacah, the wife of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. Maacah took over. I've mentioned this before. I'll go into a detailed teaching on it sometime. She took over and ruled Judah through her weak husband Rehoboam, whom she treated as her puppet. And she caused all of the people of Jerusalem to worship a false god that who was so horrible that the name for this false god is only mentioned 4 times in the Old Testament, twice in one sentence referring to Queen Maacah in the book of 1 Kings, and twice more referring to the image that Maacah worshiped in the book of 2 Chronicles. And that's the only mention of this idol. In the Hebrew, you can see it, and if you go to your Strong's Concordance on these passages, the god is called Mephibosheth. And this god is actually a female goddess, the queen of all, and her name is Death. The silly god that you Jews worship. He had his beginning. He came out of darkness, but darkness was there before him. And one day darkness will swallow all. And Mephibosheth, the darkness, will even swallow your silly God, Jehovah. And he will rot in her bowels forever. For death will rule all. Oh, yes. And Mephibosheth teaching the idea of total oblivion, no afterlife, no eternity. Mephibosheth worship is in various ways, even taught by various philosophies today, in milder terms. But Mephibosheth worship originated the idea that once Mephibosheth, the queen of darkness, the mother of death, once she takes over, now get these 3 things. The sun will go black, the moon will turn to blood, and the stars will fall from the sky, and there will be no light. Now I mention that because Joel refers to those 3 pagan metaphors in the book of Joel. Jesus will also quote Joel using those 3 metaphors. These are not Christian or Jewish metaphors. They come from paganism. St. Peter will quote these 3 things. The moon turns black, the stars fall from the sky, or the sun turns black and the moon turns to blood. Lastly, St. John will refer to this all in the past tense in the book of Revelations. He will say, past tense, and I saw the sun go black as sackcloth of hair, and I saw the moon turn to blood, and I saw the stars fall from the heavens. John will add this also in a poetic reference from Job, as a fig tree shaken by a mighty wind, shaking forth her fruit out of season. But John, writing in around 90 AD, is referring to something that he actually saw happen 20 years before in 70 AD with the destruction of Jerusalem. We're not going to finish Joel tonight, but because it's full of these metaphors that spread all over the Bible. But we will get to that by next week and see why Joel begins to use those terms. Anyway, the original witch queen, Maacah, wife of Jeroboam. Who is Maacah? She's the granddaughter of Absalom, by the way, the son of David, who wanted to destroy David's whole house and kingdom and make of Israel a Jeshurite-run kingdom. The Jeshurites worshiped this idea of total darkness. And that's what Absalom was all about. Of course, we'll get into it later. But this woman, Maacah, was a picture of absolute crazy evil. And so, okay, let's set her aside. You can go back and read about her if you wish. The second witch queen, who would you think that was? Jezebel, the most famous of them all. Yes, Jezebel, who murdered prophets, who hated everyone who did not worship her pagan god Baal. Jezebel, who decided her mission, her greatest mission in life would be to kill the prophet Elijah, who had prophesied to her and said, "You're nothing but dog food. I'll call you Alpo." The dogs are going to eat you. And we have this very dramatic story. Most Christians and Jews are well aware of the story of Jezebel as recalled in 1st and 2nd Kings and what happens to her. And she also ruled Israel. Jezebel is a Phoenician. She's not an Israelite. She is a descendant of Hiram, the king of Tyre. She is the direct daughter of Hiram's descendant, Ethbaal, the king of Tyre. And Jezebel is a God-hater. And, of course, we have the dramatic scene where where she is cast down and breaks upon the stones on the ramparts of the city of Jezreel, and chariots and horses ride over her as King Jehu's army rides in to the city of Jezreel. And after they conquer the city, Jehu turns to someone and says, "Take a few men and go get that cursed woman's body up out of the street, for she is a king's daughter. We've got to show her some respect, wicked as she was." But they go out there and they come back horror-eyed and said, "There's nothing left of her to bury except the palms of her hands, the soles of her feet, and the skin of her face. That's all there is." Why hands, feet, and face? I mean, what we read is that the dirty, mangy dogs of Jezreel ran in and devoured her. But why didn't they eat those parts of her?
Identifiable? Identifiable?
What do you mean?
I mean, we all have like I have forensics together.
But dogs don't know about fingerprints and footprints and facial features. They're just hungry dogs. Why didn't they eat those parts up? I mean, you're right. You're on something symbolic. It's that Solomon had prophesied of the 6 things that God hates. And they are body parts. Hands that shed innocent blood. The proud look. The lying tongue. Feet that are swift in running to mischief. And so forth. Those are the parts of Jezebel's body that even the starving, crummy dogs would disdain to eat. God had the dogs withdraw from eating those parts to make his point. All right, there's the story of Jezebel in a very morbid nutshell. Now, we come to Athaliah. First of all, who is Athaliah? You may be surprised to know that she is the daughter of Jezebel and Ahab. Ahab and Jezebel introduced her to the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, down south. Ahab and Israel rule over the 10 tribes of the north, out of Samaria. Athaliah is called in the scripture the daughter of Omri, but that means she's the granddaughter of Omri. Ahab was the son of Omri, or Omri. And Ahab was the son of Omri, and Ahab married Jezebel, and Athaliah was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Therefore, she's known as the daughter of Omri. But it means granddaughter. Am I making sense to anyone? All right. She marries the son of Jehoshaphat, and he dies shortly after their marriage. And now for almost 7 years, she rules supreme over Judah and Jerusalem. She and the son of Jehoshaphat have raised up a son, Ahaziah, but he dies young. He is slain by Jehu. During that scene I've already mentioned, when Jehu rides into Jezreel and Jezebel is killed, Ahaziah is killed on that same day. Down in Jerusalem, when Athaliah hears that her son Ahaziah has been killed, how does she react? She rises up and destroys all the seed royal. Now, this is quoted word for word in the Second Chronicles version also. And if you want to read it, that's Second Chronicles chapters 22 and 23. Tells this same story that I'm going over. So Athaliah does this one thing. First, let's kill all the seed of David. Now, David had been dead and gone for generations, but if you go back to David's time, you'll find that he had about 20 sons that have names in the Bible. Only one of his sons became king after him, Solomon, but what about all those other sons of David? And then we'll find, that there were brothers or various wives of Rehoboam, David's grandson. They gave him a lot of children. I think it mentions 80 children born to Rehoboam. They all descend from David, and they all marry and have children. By the time of Athaliah, descendants of David could reckon in the thousands, particularly around Jerusalem. At least hundreds, maybe up to 1,000. She, Athaliah, has anybody who claims a pedigree to the house of David, has them slain, probably beheaded. If so, this is the largest mass regicide we've seen so far in the Bible. If you go back to the book of Judges, when Gideon's, pardon the word, but it's a literally used word, when Gideon's bastard son Abimelech takes over Israel in the book of Judges, his first act is to gather his 70 brothers together and have them all beheaded upon one stone. He wants no rivals to his throne. Now that was horrible. A regicide is the murder of a prince or murder of a king or murder of a nobleman. It's called regicide. That was the worst. But there have been others who do it also. Jehu, whom I've mentioned, commits regicide in putting to death 80 sons of Ahab and Jezebel. But he doesn't get his hands on Athaliah, their daughter. But Athaliah, she says, that Jehu that Elisha anointed to be king, he murdered my mother, Jezebel, and he murdered my 80 brothers, had their heads shipped in baskets to him. And she says, well, all right, guess who I'm going to murder? All of my husband's kinfolk. everybody who descends from the house of David. And she's the last living descendant of Jezebel and Ahab. Am I making sense? This is a bloody, horrible picture. But I started reading the book of Joel to you, and these look like bloody, horrible times, don't they? If you'll read on in this, still in 2 Kings chapter 11, just a little more I'll read, and then I'll put it in my own words, and you can go home and read it yourself, both in 2 Kings 11 and 2 Chronicles 22 and chapter 23. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him from among the king's sons who were slain. And they hid him, even him and his nurse, in the bedchamber, away from Athaliah, so that he was not slain. And he was hid in the house of the Lord for 6 years. And Athaliah did reign over the land. And the 7th year, Jehoiada sent and fetched the rulers over hundreds with the captains and the guard, and brought them to him into the house of the Lord, and made a covenant with them, and took an oath of them in the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son. All right, that's enough of that. We'll get back to Joel, but you go home and read where I showed you. You'll read the rest of the story. But what's interesting is this. Athaliah has 3 things in mind. Number 1, she wants to destroy kingship in Judah, which she almost does. Number 2, she wants to destroy the office of the prophets in Judah, kill all the prophets. Anybody who speaks in the name of the Lord is going to be put to death. Joel is one of those prophets. He escapes. Number 3, Athaliah wants to put an end to the Jewish priesthood. She wants to put an end to the office of the Levites. She apparently, you can read various midrashes from Jewish writers about this story. She doesn't destroy the temple, but she closes it up, has it boarded up and shut down. And she wants eventually put an end to the entire tribe of Levi, who speak in the name of the Lord. These are, kingship, priesthood, or kingship, prophecy, and priesthood. These are her 3 motives for annihilation. These become the sun, the moon, and the stars, going black, turning to blood, and falling out of the sky. I'm not going to take time to go into it poetically, but the sun represents the kingship of Israel. She wants that sun blackened out of the sky, no more kingship for Israel. The moon represents the office of the prophet. Why is that? I could go on astronomically about this. It's because the moon has no light of its own. The moon doesn't shine. We speak of moonshine, The moon doesn't shine. It's a dead rock. We were just there last week, humanity. The moon reflects the sun's light. If the sun is on a side of it where we can see the reflection, the moon looks like it's shining, but it's only because the sun is shining on it and reflected. In the same way, prophets don't have light in themselves. They reflect the light of God. And they do it in seasons, just as the moon does. It goes through its phases. They start a month with a full moon, and then it wanes. It's in a waxing phase, where it goes down to nearly a sliver because the sun is now on another side of it, showing us only a little bit of the edge of the moon that's catching sunlight. And then when it's almost dead, it goes into a waxing phase, and the moon begins to wax and get brighter and brighter. Now this happens twice a month. There's the waning full moon, and then the waxing full moon. Pretty interesting. But in the same way, prophets come and go. Sometimes prophets offer only a little light. Sometimes prophets, like the moon, offer a bright light. But what they do is always reflecting God, the light of God, just as the moon reflects the sun. Am I making sense to anyone? Then thirdly, the stars falling from the sky. Well, when the moon turns to blood, that is because prophets are being slain. Okay. Now thirdly, stars, Joel will say not only do they fall from the sky, but they will withhold their shining. Now stars, unlike the moon, they're more like the sun because they have light of their own. Stars do not reflect light. The sun is a star, you know. And some of the tiniest little specks we see are so far away that it's taken hundreds, even thousands of years for their light to reach our eyeballs. So when you look up and, if you look at the sun, it's 96 million miles away from planet Earth, 93 million miles. Speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. And yet, traveling that fast, the speed of light, it still takes nearly 8 minutes for the light of the sun to reach your eyeball on Earth. Ain't that something? That means we could step outside right now and look and say, oh, the sun is setting. No, it set over 8 minutes ago. You're just now seeing it. It takes that long for the light of the sun to reach us. And that's our nearest star. Some of the tiniest little stars you can look up and see are millions of times larger than the sun. But they're so far away, it's taken hundreds of thousands of years to see the little glint of light coming from that star to reach you tonight. Hundreds of thousands of years. That means that star might not even exist anymore. It might have turned into a nova and blown up thousands of years ago. But you're not going to see that for another thousands of years happening. You just see the way it looked hundreds of thousands of years ago. And you're finally seeing it right now. Kind of mind-boggling, isn't it? But the idea is that stars have a kind of eternal, poetic quality to them. Stars don't rise and set like the sun does. They don't go through phases like the moon. Stars are there 24 hours a day. We just don't see them in the daytime because the closer sun's light forms kind of a light pollution for us where we can't see the stars, but they're there. They're always there. They don't rise and set. Am I making sense to any of you? There's an eternal idea about the stars, and that's why the stars represent the priesthood. They are guiding points. If you know your constellations, you know how to find the North Star. The North Star is a small star, but it's got the Big Dipper on one side of it and Cassiopeia, the lady in the chair, on the other side. And they, let's see, they turn. They turn like that around the North Star. The North Star is small. Why is it important? Because it's the only star in our universe that doesn't seem to be turning as the Earth turns. Why is that? Because the Earth's axis from the North Pole points directly at that star. And so even though our world turns in the night and these stars look like they're rotating in the sky, That North Star doesn't move. The same is true of a star you can see from Australia or South Africa, near a constellation we don't see up here, but the great constellation, the Southern Cross, they see down there, and there's a star near it that the South Pole points to, and it never changes, though other stars revolve around it, or appear to, as the earth turns. Am I making any sense to anyone? If you know the North Star, if you know other constellations like Orion and the Pleiades, and Gemini, and Leo, and Draco, if you know just a handful of constellations, many of them mentioned in the Bible, in fact. If you know them, and you're a sailor out at sea at night, you can figure the hours. They're your clock by how their relation to the horizon. If you know your stars, you don't need a calendar. You can tell the season by them, and so forth and so on. So stars are thought of. A desert traveler at midnight out in the middle of the Sahara Desert can reckon his direction by finding the North Star, and whichever direction he wants to go, he picks the right angle for it. That's why stars were important to those people. And like stars, the priesthood was important to people. The priest would tell the seasons, the eternal seasons. Priests would tell people which way they should be going. They were the instructors in the darkness of night, guiding people. Well, Athaliah makes the claim that Queen Maacah's Mephibosheth would have made. We're going to make Israel's stars fall out of the sky or withdraw their shining. Now, what does that mean? We'll either kill the priests, these stars fall from the sky, or we'll corrupt the priests and get them to convert to priests of Baal instead of priests of Yahweh. These priests will be corrupted. They will withdraw their shining as stars. Athaliah tries to do both, and you can hear her chuckling almost. That old prophet Elijah called in dogs to eat my mom, dogs to lick up my daddy's blood, King Ahab. That old prophet Elijah, he said he was going to wipe out all my family. Well, guess what? There's one left he didn't get a hold of. He's gone now, but I'm still here, a remnant that still survives. Ha! That old prophet Elijah said that there'd be none left of Ahab. None left, but here I am. And guess where I rule? Not only up in the north, but I rule Jerusalem. And she gets to rule it for 7 years. She said, that Israelite King Jehu killed my 80 brothers, but he didn't get me. Well, guess what I'm killing? All of the descendants of David, and there's none left. Well, I'll take you to the end of the story, and then we'll get back to Joel. As I can see, this is the one scenario that fits all the things that the prophet Joel is talking about in his 4 chapters of his prophecy. Am I making sense to anyone? The idea that I'm the only one left. They didn't get us all. I'm the one left. And I can restore it all. Ha ha ha. Because I am Athaliah, daughter of Jezebel. Well, it's quite ironic then when Joel begins his prophecy saying, the fig tree stood. And then the palmer worm came out of its eggs by the millions. The palmer worm chewed at the roots of my tree, God said. And then they grew into the next phase of their life and became canker worms. And they stripped off the bark from my tree. And then they became caterpillars and they ate away the leaves of my tree. And then they became locusts and ate away the fruit and the twigs and the buds from my tree. And the whole tree is dead now. What is this plague? Well, it's Athaliah and all her Zidonian and Tyrian host that she's brought in to take over Jerusalem. That which the locust has left, the caterpillar ate. That which the caterpillar left, the palmer worm ate. That which the palmer worm left, the canker worm ate. And there's nothing left. But as we'll read on in Joel, God says, but if you can just give me one little tiny seed, I will restore all. You ever seen the seed of a fig tree? You ever eaten a fig Newton?
Yes.
You know the little gritty stuff in the jelly that you chew? Those are seeds. That's the seed of a fig. If you cut a fresh fig open, it's got scores of these little tiny seeds in. God says, just give me one little seed. Still alive. And I'll plant it. And I will restore, saith the Lord. That's in the book of Joel. I will restore it all from one seed. This gives me chills thinking about it. Athaliah thinks she's the one seed of her wicked family, and that through her all of Baalism, which Jehu has now destroyed, all of Mephibosethism, all of that will be restored through me. I am the one left, and I've killed all the rest. Not quite all. There's one little 6-year-old boy named Joash who was hid away. We just read the verse a few minutes ago. Hid away where? In the closed temple. And who hid him away? Well, there's an old priest named Jehoiada. He becomes the oldest man in the Bible after the death of Moses. Moses lived to be 120 years. Jehoiada will live to be 130. Very few people get beyond 120 after the time of Moses. But he lives to be 130. And old Jehoiada, you can go home and read it tonight. He raises that little boy. He's in the temple, but the temple's closed up. So they're down in the lower temple precincts, hiding out. And he has this old man. He's not 130 now, but he's in his late 80s. He and his young wife raised this little boy, the last living seed of David that anyone knows of. And they raise him up down there in the temple. And when the boy is not quite 7 years old, he is revealed. Now, the old priest Jehoiada and his wife, what's her name? I can't think. I knew her name when I walked in. Let's see. Verse 2, Jehosheba. old Jehoiada and his young wife Jehosheba, they have their own son. And guess what his name is? They adopt the young kingly boy, Joash, but they have their own son, apparently about the same name. His name, or same age, his name is Zechariah. Now, he won't be the prophet Zechariah, but he will be a Zechariah that Jesus refers to. A Zechariah who is slain in the temple between the porch and the altar. We'll get to that later. But those two boys grow up, one adopted to be a king, the other raised to be a priest. And so all I need is a remnant, God says, and I can restore everything. That's the main theme of the book of Joel. If you priests, you Levites, will do your part, and there'll be more we'll read about, more imperative verbs. Blow ye a trumpet in Zion, Joel will say. Stand, and all of this. Do these things. Who is Joel talking to? Priests. Over and over again. Levites. Now let me get back to Athaliah's story. When these two little boys, Zechariah is probably the older of them, the adopted one is young Joash. When he's about 7 years old, old Jehoiada has been looking around and waiting, and he sent out secret messages to various prophets who are in hiding. And one of those prophets is a man named Joel. And Joel apparently comes disguised into Jerusalem and meets with Jehoiada. And Jehoiada says, look, Prophet Joel, I need you to write a letter and have 1,000 copies of it made, or 100 copies, however many. That is why we still to this day have the prophecy of Joel. And I want these carried to all of the Levites who are in hiding, scattered out all over the place. Some of them are now in Philistia, some of them in Arabia. Some of them are disguised, these Levites. They're disguised, hiding in the north, up in the Galilee and across Jordan in the Gilead regions. I want you to write this letter. And so it is probably Jehoiada who is actually speaking in the book of Joel. And Joel is his amanuensis. He's writing. Or he and Jehoiada, the old priest, are collaborating to write it. And then Joel gets this thing written and goes out and secretly has scribes copy it. And he goes around visiting other groups of Levites. And he's saying things to them like, come, congregate, collect yourselves together in Jerusalem. You can't do it all at once. You'll have to do it quietly. Athaliah and her henchmen are everywhere. But you get yourselves to Jerusalem on an appointed day. And here's what happens. Hundreds of Levites come in, not dressed as Levites, not talking like priests. They've got they're wearing ordinary robes, but they have swords and daggers hidden under their clothes. And they get together and they're all seeing one another without nodding, without waving at each other, without speaking. They look like tradesmen come to town. But on the appointed day, as Joel and Jehoiada have told them, they meet before dawn on the steps of the abandoned temple. And they gather together, and old Jehoiada comes out with a little 6-year-old boy on his shoulder. Young Joash, the last living descendant of King David. And he holds that little boy on his shoulder. And this is twice in your Bible. Read it. It's such a stirring moment. And he says, behold, the Son of David, King in Jerusalem. And at that moment, all these hundreds of Levites pull their swords out of their clothes and flash them high and fall on their knees and say, God save King Joash, son of David. And there's a big hubbub, and people are gathering around as the sun rises, and there's a great shouting. Down the avenue, in her palace, which is across the street from a temple she's been building for Baal, right there in Jerusalem, a temple of Baal. Athaliah wakes up. She says, what's all that noise about down the street? She goes to her window, to her mirror. She, curlers in her hair and her boa little robe, and she's got her bunny slippers on, and she hasn't done her face yet. Very different from Jezebel, who got herself fixed up, her coiffure, and got her face painted before she went out to try to flirt with Jehu. And Jehu said, "Throw that hag down," and they did, Athaliah, this is early in the morning. And she goes out on her balcony and she says, "What's happening down there?" And she hears them shouting, "A son of David is crowned king." She goes inside and runs down the steps calling her soldiers to her, crying, "Treason, treason." You'll find those two words in your Bible twice. "Treason, treason," she says. And some of her soldiers get behind her, and then others, as she gets out in the street, join in, which she thinks are her men also. But they're Levites, for Jehoiada on the steps holding the young child up had told the Levites, divide into 3 parts. A third of you go down there. A third of you stay around here. And a third of you cross the street to the king's closed-up palace. And these Levites, hundreds of them, they've been well trained by Joel at least for this task. And these groups get around Athaliah and they say, "We're with you, queen." It's too dark for her to see who they are. But they get around the queen and her bodyguard, and they come in and slit the throats of all of her bodyguard. And it's just the queen now, and she looks around and they've got their swords pointed at her. She runs down an alley alongside her palace to the horse stables. And they follow her in there, and as the Midrash implies, they slay her on a manure pile in the stables. And that puts an end to the wickedest reign ever seen in Jerusalem, the reign of Athaliah. Now, the story I just told you hasn't all happened yet as we're reading through the book of Joel. But we can see where Joel is headed with this. Calling priests, "Blow ye a trumpet in Zion. Gather the holy men of God to open up God's temple and restore the sacrifices in the temple of God." That's what Joel is all about, at least the first 3 chapters. Chapter 4 of Joel will turn its gaze toward the end times and the far future. Well, I've used up all of my time. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, or at least I've given you something to stir your imagination and think about. But that's where we'll be going with Joel. I'm not going to read any more history next week about all of this, but I want you to remember it, because we're now going to begin matching things that Joel says with things that actually happen in the story of Athaliah and Jehoiada and Joash and Joel, as I've recounted to you tonight. So thank you for your attendance, each one of you, and for your attention. God bless you until next week.